studied, graduated in 3 years.
So interestingly, I grew up pretty seriously overweight. My parents got divorced when I was really young. My world was coming apart, but I love fixing things and solving problems, and insurance has lots of problems to solve. So I think the thing that stops anyone from true success and greatness is the level of hubris at play. And we have that in spades in the insurance industry. And what you find is when people can dream without the pre-existing constraint that stops them up front, they actually find a way to do it.
Do you think that AI has changed the role in a way where you wouldn't recommend to your younger self that to do the same thing again?
So
Okay, hello, and welcome to Context Window, AI Insurance and the Humans Behind It podcast about what's actually working at the intersection of AI and insurance. I should have memorized this by now, but clearly I haven't. I'm Kyle Nakasuji. I know that part. I'm your host, founder of ClearCover and Dearborn Labs. Each episode, I sit down with the operators, builders, and executives who are deploying AI inside real insurance companies and get to the story behind the decisions, the trade-offs, and the hard-won lessons. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with another friend of mine, podcast extraordinaire. So I'm under a bit of pressure, I think, here to make sure my performance is up to par. Also happens to be the president and CEO of PLRB, best-selling author, founder, and managing partner at Insurance Evolution Partners. Bryan Falchuk, welcome to the show.
thank you for having me on, and no pressure. You're great as a host.
I've only done a handful. You've done many. So grade me at the end, not the beginning. How about that?
All right.
Bryan, why don't you give the audience sort of a high-level introduction to you, and then we'll go back in time and load our context window on Bryan before we get to all the AI talk.
Awesome. So I'm a longtime insurance guy. This is year 26 for me. I just passed my 26th anniversary in the industry, which was not expected at all when, like so many people. And I
congrats. I'm sorry. I don't know. What do you say to that one?
I can't change. I'm totally hooked. So yeah, got in a long time ago. I've worked in lots of different functions, lines of business, geographies, seen a bunch of companies either as an employee or a consultant or an advisor, or now also running a trade organization of carriers. And I think it's both fascinating and I like solving problems with a real purpose, and we enable the entire world to function. Risk would stop everything dead in its tracks. Yes, we're there when things go wrong. We put lives and businesses back together, but nothing would even happen in the first place without us. So I feel this real sense of purpose in my work to basically just try to support the industry in trying to do better because it matters. So that's a really vague but high-level overview of me and why I do what I do.
I don't think it was that vague, but it does fit, because I think we're going to get into it. But when I look at your background, you're multi-talented in the sense that yes, you work in insurance and have for 26 years, but you do mentoring, you do coaching. I think we're going to learn some lessons on management and leadership and discipline. And you gave this great quote. So you're clearly, broad is probably feature, not a bug here, given the extent of your career interests. Yeah, you do. Yeah. And hopefully many in this episode. We'll see.
At least we'll wear 2 in this episode.
At least 2 in this episode. All right, Bryan. So let's get your story sort of put together before we start talking about AI. You've had an interesting journey, did a handful of things. Go back to the beginning. Tell us where you grew up.
I'm from the Boston area. My father's Venezuelan, so I have all these great stories growing up that I amplify his accent because it sounds even funnier. But I grew up in the Boston area. Did he have a Venezuelan Bostonian accent? Did they blend, or that's really interesting? I don't know. Because I can't even fathom what that might sound like. But
Venezuelan accents, I don't quite know. Can they say ours?
I don't know if he knows either. But the funny thing is he stayed in Venezuela. He's a doctor. He stayed in Venezuela all the way through med school. And he had 2 cousins who went to college and med school in the US. And one of them in particular he's passed away now, but he had a much stronger accent than my dad, even though he was educated and spent probably 10 more years here. But I think he recognized through going through college here, he's oh, that makes me way more attractive to women that I'm trying to ask out on a date. And so my dad generally doesn't have an accent, but every now and then it comes out. And I just raised this because that's actually how I got started in insurance. And I didn't realize it for a long time. I always say I got in by accident. but the seed was planted when I was really little. So he and I are both like car nuts. And when I was a little kid, somewhere in the single digits, I don't know, 9, 10 years old. Well, 10 would be two double digits, but whatever. I was young. We're driving around the town that I lived in, and a Ferrari went by, and I'd never seen one in person. And I like, I was like blown away, and I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And he like gets angry with me and he goes, do you know how much it costs to insure this car? It was one of these moments where his accent came out. And so I'm just thinking like, well, it's not my problem. It still looks good. Does not change the look of it at all. He was thinking, much more practically, but there were these moments where like out of the blue and total non sequitur, he would bring insurance. I wanted to get a tattoo when I was a kid, like a teenager. And my sister was like, Dad, what would you do if one of your kids got a tattoo? And he's like, first, no insurance. No, first I cut them off, then no insurance. And I was like, so you cut us off completely, but we get the health insurance still? And then like you let us know you're not messing around. So he's always made insurance like this weird thing in my mind. I just didn't even know. And then lo and behold, he was right. So here I am. It was by accident, but nature and nurture, right?
Did he have like an insurance issue growing up? Like what imprinted insurance as like this thing to be a concern?
Well, so I don't want to speak ill about health insurance, but let me speak ill about health insurance. I think as a doctor, he's always dealt with insurance as like a difficult thing in his world. And frankly, I think most Americans have when it comes to health insurance. So yeah, I think it's just like bred into him in that way. It's not really an issue in Venezuela. Like, I don't even know if they had insurance or whatever, but yeah, like I think it was more just that on the payer side, that was a real difficulty in his professional career. So he's just wired to not like it. And like me, he's pretty cheap. So I think any bill he has to pay, he's naturally not going to like that. So like, homeowners, auto, whatever.
Interesting. I didn't put it together as you were saying it, but it does make sense. Like as a doctor, you experience a different side of I tend to gravitate towards P&C in life given our background, but like you working in the health insurance industry is part and parcel with being a physician.
It's no good.
Yeah, we'll save that for another episode, I think. A car guy, I always end up spending too much time at the beginning, but it's all right. You'll grade me at the end. You still a car guy?
Still a car guy. I'm not living my passion, but I'm constantly researching the cars I wish I would buy. And then I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to spend that. So yeah, I'm a car guy, but I drive a car I did not want, but the deal was so absurd. Like I said, the dealer came to me. I was like, absolutely not. I do not want this car. And they're like, what if we did it for this? I was like, okay, how many months can we do the lease for? And yeah. So I'm a car guy, just not living my passion.
Is there a car that you like to look at the most? One like a grail car?
I mean, putting aside like the supercars and whatnot, I'm a real admirer of like proportion and beauty. And there's a car designer, Walter da Silva, who's retired now, but he designed the Audi A5. He also designed other things that are considered like classic designs, but the A5, which doesn't exist anymore, it sort of exists. It's now what was the A4 sedan.
It's a beautiful car.
It's just like, perfectly proportioned, gorgeous car in both of its generations and the four-door version they came out with. I've always loved that car. Right now, it's the Porsche Taycan, which that's the car I keep going. Like every time I see one, it just stuns me. And it's been out for 6 years now or 5 years. Love the Mustang Mach-E for a very similar reason. And that's not a car that like most people lust after. So that's a bit of like practical and like, that's a really well done vehicle. If I could get anything right now, it would be a Taycan. And I have a lot of trouble mentally wrapping my mind around spending that kind of money on a car. Whether I can or I can't is not the issue.
The insurance is going to be expensive too.
So the insurance is going to be expensive. Porsches are incredibly expensive to maintain, even though EVs tend to be a lot cheaper. But I have a feeling my next car will be a Mustang Mach-E. I'm all in on EVs, and I will never buy a Tesla. So yeah, that's probably what I'll end up doing. And it's a beautiful car. Leave it at that.
I'll after the show, I got into driving race cars last year because I felt like I needed a new hobby. And so I have I got some stories
We
to
should
tell you
definitely talk.
about.
Yeah.
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 Which is an expensive hobby.
Yeah.
So you're growing up, your father sort of quasi introduced you to insurance through his leeriness of how it impacts our lives.
Yes. He
And
reinforced the importance of it. Let's
there we
put it
go.
that way.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Yes. And then where do we go from there? You're in
Um,
Boston. Insurance is
yeah.
important. Now what?
I studied economics and on economics, Chinese, and philosophy for some strange reason. That was my combo.
How
Undergrad,
did you choose those?
um, Chinese, similar to the insurance thing. When I was in sixth grade, there was a kid on my school bus who was always late, and it was an older Chinese woman who was bringing him out to the bus, and so he taught me how he was going to say, "Mrs. Shu, can you get me to the little bus earlier?" And it took me like a year to learn it. So that was this like forever challenge in my mind of like, I would love to learn this language, and hopefully I can go a little bit faster than I did in sixth grade. So that was planted there. And like the business mind in me was like, that's going to be really important on the global scene. I already spoke Spanish. So, I've got two really useful non-English languages. So that was the Chinese side. Definitely love the challenge. 8 a.m. class every day in college was definitely a very different college experience than I think most people would want to have, with an exam every Monday morning. But, you do what you got to do.
Really?
Yeah. And philosophy, like, God, I love thinking about things, and like the kind of mental gymnastics and problems that like leave your brain hurting. Like, before the universe existed, if there was nothing, where was it? And then like you try to picture that. Like you can't picture nothing, but it's like it makes your head hurt, and it's super fascinating. And so I loved digging into just a lot about philosophy. I graduated in 3 years. So I was one class short of my minor in both of those things. So I only have an economics degree. But yeah, my son actually was giving me a hard time about that yesterday. He's like, you said you have a minor in philosophy, but like, do you? Like, no, but I don't put it on my resume.
That still counts.
But I feel like I have it.
Do you want to go back and finish it? I don't feel like you.
I would totally no. I don't actually care, but I care, but like I would study it more. I'd love to be a professor. Like I just think like academics, education, thinking about things, watching people have that spark and get it, like that's unreal. And that's part of why I like being a leader is like I think I'm going after the same kind of thing. We'll talk about some of this stuff, but down deep, I'm actually like a self-help guru. And I think like studying and education it's all forms of self, like you're growing yourself. So that's always been there in me. So like the econ side, like business reasons for why I thought Chinese was valuable. Philosophy was about strengthening my thinking ability, if I'm being honest. So I wanted to do like management consulting type work, and applying for those jobs as I didn't know I was graduating early yet. So I was looking at summer internships, and Liberty Mutual has an internal, or at least at the time had an internal strategy consulting unit. They had an internship. I applied for it. Somehow I got the job. Liberty was significantly smaller. And I will say, hopefully no one's offended, but it was pretty mediocre at the time versus like the global powerhouse that it is now. My point being, I don't think I'd ever get hired by the Liberty of today. They'd be like, oh my God, he's not good enough. But that Liberty, I made the cut. And that's when my dad's initial lessons really hit. Is I was doing strategy management consulting work, but doing it in a space I never thought I would. And I love fixing things and solving problems, and insurance has lots of problems to solve. And so without intending to stay in insurance, I just like instantly fell for it. There's so much that we could do to make things better. And I think getting to do it internally was the right setting, because I saw how everything played out, and I was a part of the business and not just like doing some work and walking away, or keeping it sort of academic in that respect. So yeah, I spent 4 years there, 2 in a business unit, 2 in the strategy team, but in the other order. And just, that was it. Like never going to get out again.
So I want to keep going, but question on, because this just always fascinates me, particularly for someone who's like, kind of is into self-help and growth and like that. I think we're going to get in that mindset, but you studied 3, we'll give you the minors, like major, 2 minors, graduated in 3 years.
Yeah,
Like, was that always what it takes some level of like ambition and forethought as an 18-year-old kid to be like, yeah, it's a really good blend of things to study is
totally.
economics and
Yeah,
Chinese and philosophy. And I'll just finish in 3 years. Like I spent 5 years in college because I didn't want to get a real job and I was playing football. Like I had not even an ounce of this level of forethought and ambition. So like where does that was that always
yeah.
in you? Is that
Says the
something
guy with
that
the JD MBA, but we'll set that aside.
again like trying to avoid a job?
I know, and we've talked about that when you were on my show and writing the book. So interestingly, like I grew up pretty seriously overweight. And like there's a whole other pathway for us to talk about, but like my parents got divorced when I was really young. And this is actually why I like fixing things is as a little kid, my world was coming apart. I had no control or agency or even understanding of it. So I had a lot of anxiety growing up because I felt like things weren't okay and there's nothing I could do about it. One thing that makes you feel a lot of comfort instantaneously is food. There's drugs, there's alcohol. I was 4 or 5 years old. So I wasn't even aware of those things, luckily. But I was aware of Oreos. And yeah, I mean, I went from being this skinny, smiley little kid to you see a picture of me a year later at like 6 or whatever. And I was like double the size that I was in the last photo of me. So I always grew up very overweight. I really didn't want to do things. I would get really nervous if there was any sort of like movement involved. And I was forced to do it. It's like, well, sign Bryan up for soccer in the town to like make him run around more. And I hated it. I hated all of it. I just wanted to sit on the couch and kind of hide. So I look at these things that like, I've also always done all of my work as soon as it's assigned really diligently. I haven't always gotten the best grades, but I've always like gotten the work done. Yeah. And it's kind of funny, like the juxtaposition of those things. But when I have more realization of what's going on, you can't stop me. And I've learned that my capacity to produce is markedly different than most people's. So like I can get a lot done in a lot less time than most people can. And luckily the quality has come up significantly from like I was a C student in English class in high school. I've written 5 best-selling books. So like, I kind of want to go back to my English teachers in high school and be like,
Told you
something I'm not going to say on your podcast. Yeah, it's just, it's because I understood myself better.
When did you somewhere between 6 and 18 then it
yeah
clicked for you? And
there was a guy in my high school who thankfully I've stayed in touch with. We actually just had lunch the other day. His name is Henri Andres. He's Swiss French and he's got a much better accent than my dad's. It's really cool. But he was the first person, he ran the PE program and he was one of the coaches in the athletics department in my high school. He's the first person who actually like stopped to understand me and figure out what drives me and what interests me when it comes to my body and movement. Instead of like, hey, fat kid, go run because you're too fat and you need to lose weight. He took the time to get to know me and for me to get to know myself and introduce me to things effectively through that lens. I genuinely mean this. I owe Mr. Andre my life. Not just like, I don't know if I'd be alive or not. I was on a pathway to, an early grave one way or the other, but I would not have anything like the life I have now or the achievement. And frankly, like I help other people too. So, it expands out. Like his impact on me has been exponential when you think about, and this sounds like really self-absorbed, but even like my son wouldn't exist if not for him. No question. Because my wife was like way out of my league. I would never have spoken to her, let alone would she have talked to me if I was the 26-year-old version of the me that met Mr. Andre and just was like gaining 10, 20 pounds a year.
wow.
I stopped weighing myself at 282 pounds. No, sorry, 248. I don't know why I know the 282. At some point, I did get some other weight, maybe at a doctor's appointment or something, because I know I was in the 280s, which is just absurd. And I was tall, but I wasn't like 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
So I was not tall enough to carry it. So yeah, he changed my life. And that started freshman year because I did PE to get out of the sports requirement. thinking it would be easy, and it was, but it's not because it wasn't work.
Hmm.
And by junior year, I really owned so much of it that I understood what I needed to do. And the only problem is I became bulimic. Um, not not by like, throwing up, but just excessive exercise, like 5 to 6 hours of cardio a day over the summer. So I finished junior year really, really big. I was more fit underneath, but I was also like quite large. And then I went into senior year probably 80 pounds lighter. And
Wow.
yeah, it was in 2.5 months, which is not terribly safe. But by the end of my senior year, yeah, I was down under 200 pounds for the first time since I was like 12.
Wow.
I weigh the same today as I did in fifth grade. So when people talk about wanting to be at their high school weight, I'm like, dude, I'd be dead if I was at my high school weight. I'm talking
Wow.
elementary school, like maybe even preschool, but that might be a little bit much. That's probably a bit too much.
Um, I mean, I've heard parts of this story from you before, but not the whole thing. And like,
Yeah.
I'm always, I'm, I'm, uh, I'm impressed by sort of discovering that level of work ethic that early in your life. And like, I hadn't heard the story about your teacher, but having that kind of someone step into your life and offer you the opportunity to discover that about yourself
Yeah.
is just so incredibly valuable.
There's some
And
beautiful people out there, and some of us are really, I don't mean looks wise, like their soul. Like
yeah,
he is
yeah,
such an incredible human being. It's a little bit weird for me knowing him as an adult, and like he shares things that he's really frustrated about and stuff. And it's always kind of like, oh, this is weird. Or it's like
yeah,
uncomfortable because I've never been used to seeing him as someone who had any sort of struggles, but it's also kind of eye opening that like he's also just a human being
yeah.
and he's got his own stuff and I can be there for him in the way he was there for me. So we have a great relationship, like that summer lunch when he's not, teaching in school, and that's become a really nice tradition for us.
What a great story. And so you had sort of discovered this work ethic with, it's obviously intrinsic, but it was sort of pulled out of you by a great
Yeah.
mentor. That I assume then is part of the reason why like it carried over from your physical sort of activity and like wanting to be fit clearly to how you thought about living your life as well, given
Yeah.
like I'm going to study 3 things and graduate in 3 years. And like that same work ethic wasn't limited to your physical appearance. It seems to
True.
map the
Yeah.
rest of
Yeah.
your life.
And like to be fair, like I qualified for a bunch of AP classes in high school, and I took the tests, and I did well on all of them. So I like it wasn't I was sitting like there are people who plot all this or their parents are like riding them to I was the youngest of four. I don't think my parents had a clue what I was doing. And because I was pretty like I had three older siblings, the one next to me, like they had she was very smart, but they also had moments where like she was partying too much and whatnot. Like Brian didn't do anything. I worked at an ice cream place and then I delivered pizza, which is kind of ironic that I'm around like food all the time, but it also made me not want any of this stuff. But like,
Yeah.
I was earning money, I was doing schoolwork, I didn't drink, I didn't really go to parties, like they didn't worry about me. So, but no one was like, scheduling me for like piano lessons and violin lessons and this and like I handled my own college applications and like I don't think my parents had a clue where I was applying. Or I remember my father freaked out about like all of a sudden it hit him and he's like, you're not going to get in anywhere, and which is a great thing to hear. And like we need to start thinking like who do we know places, and like I got into schools, I got scholarships offered to me, but it wasn't because I was like going after it insanely. It was just sort of happening. Like it's
Huh.
just how I'm wired. So I was doing what I needed to do without it being this like, I don't know. I wasn't type A about it, which is also ironic. Oh, I'm going on about things, but I haven't reflected on this. So like here's a philosophy class right here, right now.
Yeah, well, that's part of the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to. I mean, we've done a handful of these. We have a list of people we're going to talk to, and they're all just incredibly high achievers. And for me, like it's so interesting to be able to get just a little bit of time to try and lift up the hood and be like, where did it come from? Because like everyone's journey is different, but I think
Yeah.
there's like underlying componentry to people who have been successful. That's common. And it's these things like discipline and motivation. And like when I was a venture investor, there was this thing going around, and it's very, it's a little harsh, and I don't know if it was true or not, but for a while there was some very famous investors who said, when we look for founders, we look for someone who's been damaged, because having gone through that, like that damaging and that suffering changes a person, and it gives them a level of work ethic and determination that is what we actually want from our startup founders. And like, I'm not sure it was entirely healthy for venture firms to be like, we want damaged people to be our founders. But again, like I do think what you find is people who are wildly successful have this like some source of that drive to do what it takes to find that level of success. And it's so interesting to me to try and talk to people and like, at least at a surface level, start to understand where that comes from.
I mean, you hear a version of that is like, I had a professor who taught, it's a class called Top Management Teams, which was awesome, about like successful leaders and not. And he's written a bunch of books on it. And he's always saying like, you want a leader who's been battle tested and failed. So maybe it's not damaged, but it's like, you need to know that they didn't just like move on before the problem set in. And what did they do in the back of that? And I think like, whether it's damage or failure or growing up with like an alcoholic parent, for example, you see this bifurcation. So like the alcohol use or abuse or, physical violence in homes, like growing up with physical abuse, you see that like one pathway is people become a user, abuser, whatever themselves, or they will never in a million years do anything like that and work so hard against that sort of thing. And I think there's something similar in any failures or trauma that we, or damage that we take in throughout our lives, is like we either take a very similar path and you see people who fail and they just keep failing, or they get fired for whatever behaviors and they keep repeating it, and it's the whole world is wrong, not them. And then you see people who are, and I've had failures and I've tried to learn from them. It's like, wow, that was really hard. I still feel it inside of me, and I can either choose to erode or I can choose to grow from this and make sure that never happens to me again, which might be about them. It might just be like, and I've done this, I made a really bad choice in choosing where to work. And it was a hyper political place, a lot of game playing. It was poisonous, and I could not have been more miserable. And I left after 11 months. That's not a great thing for anyone's resume, right? You never want to have like these short-term things because it raises questions. But I realized like, they're going to be the way they're going to be. I'm not going to change that. And I was trying to, and then I was just suppressing myself to try to survive. And neither of those things is great. So the answer was for me to stay true to my values, and I should not have picked that place in the first place. And I knew that when I made the decision, but I was lying to myself about it. And I was trying to explain it away because there were reasons why it was the easier choice than the one that I knew I should like. The one I should have taken was out of state. And so there was a whole like commuting thing and a family impact. I was like, well, I got to take the one in Boston. And it was terrible. I got some great articles out of it that I wrote for Inc. magazine. So like, I appreciate that. But in hindsight, it didn't matter. And they were great stories. But like, that was a moment for me to learn and grow. And it could have been like the downfall of my career and starting like, every time gets a little bit worse.
Yep. The longer you lie to yourself, the easier it becomes to tell a lie.
Yeah.
And so like, having
harder.
Stepping out at 11 months is takes some courage, but it like, it helps you get out of that spiral. Cause I do think a lot of people end up in well, let's talk about it. So you're at Liberty for 4 years.
Yep.
Started in a business unit. What business unit?
I started in the corporate side and the strategy consulting team. And then I went to personal lines, which was run by the guy, Tim Sweeney, who's the CEO of Liberty today.
You started in strategy consulting, and then they pulled you over into personal lines.
Yeah.
And you spent
I did a lot of work for personal lines. And then they were like, why don't you come and work for us?
Come work for us.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what happened after 4 years?
I went to get my master's. I went to Tuck at Dartmouth. And so technically, did I really have 26 years or did I take a break? But I spent my summer I was a client of McKinsey's, and I said I want to do consulting work, and that's the only firm I'm not going to apply to. But they were hosting a free dinner, and like, I'm in debt. I don't know. And so it's like, well, I'll go to the dinner. And I met a partner who was talking about this amazing work he did, and I realized that stuff I worked on, I just didn't know McKinsey was the genesis of it. So I had some bad experience with McKinsey for some work that they did that didn't go well. Um, and I didn't even know about the stuff that did go well. And so hearing about it is like, oh my God, like that was incredible. That was some of the best experience of my 4 years at Liberty. And like one of the things led to what I wrote my business school essays about. That was like the basis for me to get into school. And I had no idea that McKinsey was behind it. So I, connected with him and learned more. And so lo and behold, I'll never go there. I ended up going to McKinsey. I got to work on antiperspirant and deodorant in my summer, which is the only time I worked on non-insurance. I was also the only one on the team who was happy to be working on it because I thought it was so cool. There's a physical product, and like we had like shopping shelves set up like a CVS or something. Everyone else is like, oh, we got stuck on this. It's like, this is amazing. You don't just like have it to hold because you printed it out. Yeah. So other than that short stint on Smelly Men, I was able to, I did all my work in the insurance vertical there, which was really good because it meant I got to move through the firm a lot faster and work on tougher things than I might have been able to do if I was just like a generalist. I felt stupid every day because everyone is so smart doing such complex, just like mind-blowing stuff. And so to at least understand the work we're working on and the industry and stuff, I was like the expert in the team on insurance over and over again. So that helped with just like being completely lost. But man, did I grow while I was there. Like it was really hard and there were ups and downs, but I came out materially different than I went in, more so than the 2 years I spent in business school. The 2 years I spent at McKinsey 100% changed who I was. I would not be where I am. Setting aside like the brand name or whatever, it's like I couldn't do what I've done if it wasn't for what I built while I was there. For me,
how much of it was this like drive that we have already talked about manifesting itself in the work at McKinsey versus McKinsey as like a training ground and like the tools they bring in order to mold you?
No, I think it was more McKinsey, and just surrounding myself with people who were that smart and capable. And some of them were terrible, really smart people who were really bad managers, really bad leaders. And some of them were incredible. And the problem was, as a client, I had only been exposed to some problematic people that were doing shoddy work. And in all fairness, that was during the dot-com bubble period. McKinsey had overhired. This is under Rajat Gupta, who you can Google, not a savory character. It's part of the Galleon stuff that went down. Like he was arguably going to prison, like made a lot of wrong moves. And I think did a lot of damage to the firm. And I came on after that had been cleaned up. So the McKinsey I experienced was not the McKinsey I worked at. And you could see that night and day, and people who lived through it talked about the difference. So I had a much different experience, but like there's good and bad people everywhere. Right. So some of the folks I work with, I would choose to never work with again. Most of the people I worked with were unbelievable, and I stay in touch with them. I just saw someone like a month ago, and first thing was like run over and hug each other. And it's like you forget, like, oh my God, the grueling hours that we spent like just like grinding through stuff. But yeah, I think it's more the training.
The AI questions are supposed to be later, but I can't help weave one in here. So it sounds like your experience at McKinsey was formative, and if you were going through that same experience today, do you think it would be as formative, or do you think that AI has changed the role that role in that job in a way where it wouldn't you wouldn't recommend to your younger self to do the same thing again?
So yes to the first part, no to the second part.
Okay.
So no doubt it's materially different than it ever was. And I think the same is true for when the internet came in, although in a different way. Like they used to make the slides by hand, and like use rulers and protractors and cut out shapes and like obviously glue sticks, whatnot. Like that's PowerPoint.
Yeah.
But now it's like, why would you even do that? Just like prompt and
Yeah.
get the AI to do,
Build the deck,
right?
please. Yeah.
Yeah, like here's the data. This is the story I'm trying to tell.
Right.
And I shouldn't say that. I don't know if that's what they're doing, but we could. So I think it would still be incredibly formative and developmental and training and enriching, but on a different paradigm. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have a team of coworkers that someone developed for me in Claude to help me with my podcast, and it's like a new day. Every time I interact with them, I actually like I have a team of people working with me now, as silly as that sounds, because they're not, but they are.
They are.
That it's changing my mind on so many things and how I'm approaching problems. So I think that's more like, no, I wouldn't have grown the same things in the same way, but those things aren't necessarily relevant today. So would I still grow the subject matter expertise and the understanding and the dynamics? So yes. And that's what changed about me. It wasn't my skills in Excel, which also changed dramatically. And Excel is probably my best friend today because of that time. But my understanding of what it takes to be really successful in insurance and the way that, I mean, that has changed, but that momentum started then. I think that still stands. The way you get there is different and the tools you're using in it are different, or maybe the piece you do versus the AI is different, but you're still growing. So I would still recommend it. It's a totally different thing.
Okay. Take us. So McKinsey for
2 years.
Yep.
I said I wanted to stay through getting promoted to, we call it engagement manager, like someone running a study. And that was my next thing. I had it all lined up. And then a headhunter came calling about 2 different opportunities at Beazley, a specialty insurer that I'd never heard of. I was always like in the big, because McKinsey's expensive. So the only folks I worked for were, big multinational insurers. And that's all I knew of insurance because I came from that. And I didn't love it. Like I felt it was really mediocre, but this thing from Beazley comes and I wouldn't say rude, but I wasn't interested in what they were talking about. I wasn't impressed with the company because I'd never heard of it and I only knew these big brands. And I was at McKinsey and I was like, I don't want to step back. Like I finally have this, like, I always felt a chip on my shoulder, if that's the right term for it, about working at Liberty, because Liberty had been viewed as pretty mediocre. And I felt that when I was applying to consulting companies. And so I finally made it and finally have a big brand name. And I'd talk to McKinsey. And then I go to this insurance company I'd never heard of. Lo and behold, Beazley would certainly go on to be quite respected, especially in cyber. But yeah, I wasn't interested. And I thought they were going about the role wrong. And being a typical McKinsey consultant, I let them know.
In the application process, in the recruitment process.
I told the recruiter, I was like, so I don't think you should hire for this role. I think you should have like a contractor do this role, and this other role that you're not talking to me about. Like, I think that's really interesting. I'd love to talk to you about that. And here's what I see possible for it, which isn't quite how you defined it. And luckily, the woman in HR was like, yeah, talk to me some more about that. And I thought she was going to be like, oh, he's a complete jerk. We don't want anything to do with him. Which may have been true, but at least she did want to talk some more.
That's funny.
Yeah, I went on, did the interview with them. I flew down to DC to meet with all these execs from England who happened to be over at the time. And I remember like, I got on the plane after the interviews and I called my wife before we took off and I was sweating bullets. I was like, I was just doing this to see like what's out there and to start to, like I was set on staying at McKinsey. And she worked at McKinsey as well. She was a headhunter or recruiter there. So like whenever people found out I worked at McKinsey and then my wife worked in recruiting, they're like, oh, that's how he got in. But I started before she did. I always have to clarify that.
It's on the record now. So for what it's worth.
She got in because of me. Come on.
Yes. There we go.
But yeah, so I went from like feeling like I had probably killed my chances of getting an offer for the way that I started to, I call my wife. It's like, I'm freaking out. Like after meeting with them, I have to go work there. She's like, you weren't saying that this morning. I was like, no, this place is amazing. I had no idea I never knew insurance could be like this. The things I was talking to them about and the way they were engaging, I'd never seen anyone in insurance talk or think like that. And it blew my mind. And thank God, by the time I landed, it's a short flight from DC to Boston. Thank God I had an offer waiting for me as soon as I landed. Like, turn on my phone, there's a voicemail there. It's like, oh, because I don't think I would have survived the cab ride home at that point.
Wow.
So I was at Beazley for 6.5 years, few different roles. Started in a trading team, went on to set up distribution for that team, and that became a model that the rest of the business used. And then I took over U.S. operations and did, like, I think 4 years doing that. I joined when I was like the 500 and something employee. We were just like $1.5 billion in premium, and now Beazley's selling to Zurich, and they're doing like $6 billion in premium. And God, I wish I didn't sell my shares a few years ago. But yeah, it's like I did well, but I didn't do that well.
Night
and day.
Any lasting lessons from being part of a company that was on sort of a meteoric rise like that?
Tons.
Yeah.
The speed of change, the ability to have impact as rapidly as we could. That was profound. I got exposure to a lot of things, and at a really senior and operational level. And I hadn't done that in my time at Liberty or McKinsey. So that was really educational. It was my first time having direct reports. I ended up having like 80 people on my team. Luckily not all direct reporting to me, but plenty. I built things out. There's so much firsthand experience I got in like the trenches of running and building a business and having to make tough decisions. And also, like, not just looking at something that wasn't performing and here's ways to fix it, but like I totally turned around. Like, the team that I was managing at the beginning was one of the lowest returns on capital, negative. We were being subsidized by our peers in the UK. And when I left that team to go run operations, we were the second highest in the company. Our return on capital was 68%.
Wow.
And our threshold was 12. So like, this was like a model operation for the business. And that's awesome to get to be a part of. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I grew a ton. I worked on a core system project. I was a business lead on it. And like, that ended up being super valuable through the rest of my career. This is pre-cloud or any, we were building it ourselves, and there was no such thing as APIs yet. Learned a lot of really bad lessons. And I had our CIO said something to me, and I always caveat this, that I don't know if this is appropriate in the US. I have a feeling it isn't. I worked in EPL, Employment Practices Liability, for 10 years. So this feels like it's not appropriate. But he's French, and this was in Europe, so I feel like they can say things like this. But he said, you never want to be pregnant with someone else's baby, which, like, set aside, surrogates, because that's a whole thing, and that's okay. But I got his point. And that has stuck with me, that when I've looked at like other opportunities to take things on and turn them around, I've tried to figure out, like, is it too far gone? And is it then going to be that I'm presiding over the death of something that someone else caused, but it's my fault? There's not to say, like, don't be willing to take responsibility for something, but know before you get into it whether you're actually going to be able to get there, or if the inertia is too much working against you.
Yeah, those opportunities are, I won't share the story because it's not mine to share, but they, there's like a big divergence in outcomes in those situations where you get brought in. There's a mess. You've heard these stories before. Like there's something that's like, not quite on the rails, and you get brought in. And I think there are only two, in my experience, good choices you can make. One is, to your point, like, unfixable. I'm not going to preside over the rest of the downfall of this. And so, like, I'm just not for me. The other is, like, I've just done enough homework to know that I don't actually have to do much fixing. I just have to wait. Like, this is actually on its way to being fixed. People have just grown impatient. And so as a result, like, I can step in and work on sort of making sure the patience exists, and being in, having someone new step in to take over tends to extend the lifeline of something a little bit. And so, like, those are the two ways I've seen this go well. The middle one is the wrong one, where it's like, no one else could fix it, but I can. And that's where it's like, it's possible, but the probability of that working out well for you goes down substantially on that middle path.
I was going to say the middle path is the one I like, because I don't want to just come in and so someone else started rolling the snowball down the hill, and I'm going to be like, look how big it got. That's not me. What I
They
want
I
to know is
think
it's not just going to die, but I need to do this. And it's not to say like I'm the only human being ever that could fix this, but I know I can turn this around. I know
mhm,
I can do this. And I mean, that's slightly different context. And I don't mean this to put anything down about it, but that was the situation with PLRB. Is I was trying to figure out, as our relevance had faded over time, and I think my predecessor had locked in too much of that continued irrelevance or growing irrelevance, was it too late? Like,
hmm,
where was the boulder on that hill? Um,
hmm,
or are there things I can do to change the way things are going? And is there enough time left for us for those things to matter? I definitely knew some of the things to do, and that's what I pitched to the board, but I just wasn't sure if they would matter. And I don't like making change by wiping everyone out and replacing them. You might have to, but I love the idea of making change with the people that are there. Back to that early point about like learning and getting people to have that epiphany. You know, it's like if everyone's living in a cave, they're not used to sunlight, you bring them outside, hopefully their eyes adjust and they're blown
yeah,
away by
yeah,
what they see. But for some people, they can't do it. So you need to be able to figure that out. But I don't want to just take everyone out preemptively just because.
right. Yeah, I also in my career have found myself gravitating towards that middle path. And I think
Mm,
I will, I'm going to stand by my statement of like, I think the expected value for the person, like that, if you look at the expected value of like economic value to the individual, I still think these two exterior paths have a higher expected value. Like I'll steer clear
yeah.
because it's just problems very hard and doesn't appear
Yeah.
fixable, or it's already fixed. I just have to preside over that.
Yeah.
I think the EVs are higher there. That center
Yeah.
path though is really attractive and it can work, but I do think that you have to acknowledge that the expected value is different. And like you almost, I think this is startups are all in the middle.
Yeah.
And the reason startups are that it's still okay is because theoretically you should structure the outcome such that the upside makes up for the lower probability of success. And like
Yeah.
that's why when you think about how you create an incentive for someone to work in a startup, you say, like, well, look, the only way I can make that expected value math work in my favor is if the magnitude of the outcome is sufficiently high to make up for the probability of that good outcome being substantially lower versus these other paths where it,
Yeah.
again, like my expected value looks better because of the probability, not because of like the magnitude of return. So I think you can
Right.
shape those middle opportunities to be useful. But I will say in my like self-diagnosing, sometimes we choose them because as humans we crave significance.
Mm,
And it makes you feel very significant to be on that middle path because now you are the deciding factor. You are the
yeah.
one who's accountable and respond. And like that can be a good or a bad thing. But I think for me, at least, like sometimes I find myself on that path, even though the expected value doesn't quite make a ton of sense because you feel significant to be working on a problem like that in that kind of
Yeah.
position.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm reflecting on things I'm not going to get into, but yeah,
Maybe
you're swinging a lot of nerves. Yeah.
this was
It's good.
it's a podcast, not a therapy session for you at least. So Beazley, and then
Yeah.
keep us going.
Then the 11-month train wreck. Um, that I don't want to get into
We'll
is,
protect the guilty. You're fine.
yeah, I mean, I will give one story because it's in the Inc. article, but I had a team in Lansing, Michigan. I shouldn't have said where in Michigan because it'd be more obvious, but whatever. You can see on my LinkedIn where I worked. I had a team in Michigan. I went to see them. I came back. No, I hadn't gone yet. I had submitted an expense report with my flight to Michigan, and my boss, I had a glass wall on the side of my office. My boss comes up holding up my expense report and bangs hard on the glass. And I was on a call. She's like, come to my office. So I was like, yeah, be there in a minute. Got myself off a phone call, went down to see her. I was like, hey, you want to see me? She's like, no, where did you get that idea? I was like, it's like 12 seconds ago. You were just at my window with my expense report, asked me to come down. She's like, oh, well, while you're here, I need to talk to you about your expense report. It's like, what the? By the way, it was like $198 for the flight. Just saying. So she didn't have an issue with that. She was shocked that I was going to Michigan and hadn't told her, not that I was going, but who am I going to see and what am I going to say to them?
Huh.
And I was like, well, I was going to see my team there to meet with them, have, catch ups, like see where some projects are at. Okay, well, I'm going to need to have a list of all the people and the exact things you're going to say to them. I was like, what? Like, what? That kind of thing happened all the time.
Wow.
So that was just like one little thing, but it's like, okay, you were clearly just at my window. There's only one female C-suite leader at the company, and you're wearing a red dress. So like, you're very bright and easy to spot right now. Like
what a like Twilight Zone moment. What are you trying? Was it like a head game to be like
that? Yes, everything with her was a head game. She would plant information to see. So she had like some spies. They would plant things, say them, and then she would see if you would bring it back to her, so she would know if she could trust you. It was just like, and the people who did it were also so like, the whole thing was so obvious. So like someone would stop by my office and be like, hey, did you hear this? And I'm like, there's no reason for you to know this or to be telling me this. So I know what's going on here, and I know you're her lackey. I didn't say any of that. Then I'd go down for a catch up and be like, hey, I just heard about this. So it was like, it was really easy to like live through the situation because you could spot the game a mile away, but God, was it exhausting and wasteful.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. So that was fun.
The significance thing comes from Tony Robbins. I also am a bit of a self-help guru. I'm a big Tony guy. And what he talks about is like the 6 core human motivations, and certainty, uncertainty, significance, connection, growth, love, I think are the 6. But this like drama creating behavior is also significance seeking, right? Like that's how you create that stuff to make yourself feel important.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And so people are very much not at ease when things are at ease.
Yeah. It's not great. Okay. So 11 months, we move on.
So, yeah. So, I helped out. There's a friend who had started a safety tech startup. So I did some advisory work for them while I trained for a marathon, which was great. Like, worked really well that I like had my mornings free. And so it was a fun period, a lot of thinking on a lot of long runs. Awesome. I actually had a role lined up to be number 2 to a chief claims officer who was like a mentor of mine, someone I gotten really close to. And my last day at that 11-month job, he called me to be like, that morning, he was like, hey, I just handed in my resignation. So, and we were already talking about me joining. So he's like, just sit tight. I'll resurface. Like, I have the next thing, but I need some time. It's like, oh, so I thought I had everything mapped out. That didn't work out, but that's fine. Someone else who had been a mentor to me was the CEO of Hiscox USA. And through a headhunter, they were looking for their next chief claims officer for the US. And so the CEO was like, you should look at Bryan. I've gotten to know him over the years, and he would be a good fit because of my time at Beazley. And like, I was in the space they were in. We were a direct competitor to them. One trick is I'd never worked in claims directly. I worked in underwriting. And so like claims was a part of our process, and I ran ops and we supported claims. Like, I'd been around claims, but I'd never been in claims. Interviewed for the role, got it. And that was such a game changer for me. Like, Beazley was as well. I really think, having a C-suite title, like, it changes how people look at you. There's no question that, just from the inbound nonsense sales pitches I get on LinkedIn, I know that would that all changed when I was like chief anything.
Yeah.
But the only problem was that job was in Atlanta. My family lives in Boston, and my wife's got a lot of health issues. And so, my son was 7 at the time. So like, to uproot my family and disrupt the providers that she was reliant on and everything didn't make any sense. So I got an apartment down there and commuted every week. And I think it's a sign of how amazing my team was and that job was that I didn't mind. So I was getting up at 2:30 in the morning. Caught the first flight down. I usually got into the office before anyone local, which I just have to say, if your boss is flying in from like 1,000 miles away and beats you to the office, maybe like get in the car a few minutes earlier.
Yeah,
Traffic's really bad in Atlanta, but yeah, unbelievable time at Hiscox. I'd say I spent 3 years there. 2 out of the 3 years were amazing, like absolutely amazing. I cried my last day there. So did a lot of the other people. Just like, it wasn't just me. Just the best people, the best team. We were killing it. The third year was rough. There were some issues in the book that reared their head. And claims is where those things show. So like my peer, who was the CUO, really went from being a very close friend to hating me tremendously and trying really hard to get me fired. And that just set off I did a TEDx talk on it, set off a whole, like, just, it stopped being fun. And that commute started to be really tough. And so I got to the 3-year mark and I was putting my son to bed on one of the weekend nights that, like, it's the only time I'm home. And it hit me as like, I've missed 30% of his life. And so I was like, my boss was coming into town from London. So I was like, we should have a talk. And I think he was having the same thought. So that talk was really quick and really easy. And so we figured out a way for me to leave. And that's what I did. But I miss my time at Hiscox, really the first 2 years. So like, I loved that team. They're just incredible. And we all grew so much from working together.
You stay in touch with some of them?
Yeah, a lot of them. The thing I'm like, a sign that makes me most proud is I had, I think, 5 or 6 direct reports at the end. 4 of them ran like teams within the claims team. 3 of those 4 went on to be chief claims officers in their next roles. One of them stuck it out at Hiscox, and he's amazing. He should be chief claims officer, or at least now or at some point in the future. And like, that's the pathway he wanted to take, I believe. So it's not that he couldn't have done it if he went after those opportunities, but he didn't. They pursued stuff. But that makes me really proud, is like, you know, the people that I was leading, was developing, was standing by, was supporting, helping to grow, that they really proved it out in the industry, that like, kick some ass. Yeah, I love them. They're awesome. And we stay in touch. A lot of it, like, just texting with one of them the other day, like, really good people.
So, okay. So keep us going. You had a sounds like a bit of a whirlwind stay at Hiscox, with like 2 incredible years. 1 year that was a little trickier to manage. And now you're out. What happens then?
Yeah. So I had been one of the first customers of an insurtech called Hi Marley. And I was at a conference speaking on a panel, and the founder, this guy Mike, came up to me and, you know, commented on my panel. He's like, I want to tell you about this thing we're building. It's like for texting and claims. And I was like, oh, it sounds great. And I'm thinking, like, this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Like, who would need to I'm like, I'm not in high school. I don't text. And at the time, like, I didn't text. And then I went back to Atlanta and told my team, and they're like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, how, like, we can't get people to respond to us. They don't email back. Like, they won't pick up the phone. And then they're calling us back when we're, you know, not at work. Like, claims are getting stuck for no valid reason other than just like, we can't get an answer to a simple question. And it's like, okay, I was wrong. So reached out to this guy, Mike. And I was like, so, you know, luckily I didn't tell him I thought it was a stupid idea, but he knows the story now. So yeah, we implemented, we were their first customer, but our press release went out second. So technically, Hiscox was the second customer of Hi Marley, but we were actually live first.
We've got it on the record now as well.
Yeah,
so you're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
West Bend Mutual was technically their first, or like officially their first customer. So I joined Hi Marley. So, you know, Mike and I had gotten pretty close, gotten to know each other. Him and his 2 co-founders came down a bunch to build it out and do the implementation. And we all got to know each other, and it was really good. So they raised their Series A, and they're in Boston. And so Mike was like, you know, would you be interested in joining? This is before I was leaving Hiscox. And I was like, you know, tough role to give up. I don't know, but I've been pretty unhappy. And so he's like, we can't do anything until we raise our A. And then they did. And so I had a couple months off in between, but, you know, knowing I was going to be joining Hi Marley. So I joined, I think, like February 7th or something like that. It was employee number 17. It was never intended to be a long thing, but I was running sales. I'm not a sales guy. I briefly sold cars, and that did not go well. I did sell some cars, but it was miserable. So yeah, it was an incredible and terrible experience at the same time. And I'll say that openly. Like, it was amazing and really hard because it was really early. I was not one of the founders. And so, like, I'm out there like I also thought I'd be in town a lot, which, like, actually before I knew I was going to Atlanta most of the time, now I'm just like, I'm in Iowa and then I'm going to Chicago and like all over the place. But I'm going out thinking like, this is our offering. This is the tiers of like levels you can subscribe to and whatever. And I'm representing that. And then I come back and it's like, oh, everything's changed. So that's like, this is what's hard in a startup. And because I wasn't a co-founder, I didn't have the same level of agency in that. And I think more importantly, I wasn't there day to day and everyone else was because I was out. And culturally we were different. So that was part of what made it really hard. But it's being at a startup is really, I mean, you definitely know this. I always warn people, you hear about it and you think like, oh yeah, I've worked really hard and I've had to take on lots of different things. I mean, it's the same thing. If anyone has kids, they were told about the sleep deprivation up front and they're like, I'm a smart individual. I've stayed up late before. I've pulled all-nighters. I've been really tired and had to go to work. I get it. No, you don't. And once you actually live the sleep deprivation of like, being a parent of a young child, an early, a newborn, you're like, oh my God, I never could have understand this. I think startup life is a lot like that. It's different. And like, I did well. We had closed a lot of deals. They grew really well. It got them to the next funding round. That's awesome. But it's tough. And the lifestyle was tough. And I missed the carrier world. And one of the things that really hit me, and this is actually why selling Toyotas didn't work for me, is if I'm out at a carrier talking to the chief claims officer about the issues that they're facing and trying to solve for, and there's so much I want to talk to them about and so many ways to engage in that, but I'm there to sell them a texting solution for their claims. And so like, I have to bring it back to that. And it's not that that's bad or unhelpful. It was great and really helpful, but I'm hearing so much more and I want to engage so much more in what's going on. And Mike Green, the founder, the CEO, he really helped me in working through that and figuring out. So like, he was very supportive of me not staying. And we found a real salesperson to take over because I wasn't. And like that, they needed a genuine like enterprise SaaS salesperson. And actually the person that we like modeled as like, this is who we want, obviously we'll never get him, but we gave that to the folks doing the search, and that's who they got.
Oh, funny.
So yeah, that's happened a few times where it's like, well, we obviously never get that, but that's what we want. We'll never get it.
That's a good search firm, by the way.
Awesome.
That's
yeah. And kudos to Dan for seeing that possibility for him to join. He's still there and they've done tremendously well. So Dan's done a great job in that. But yeah, I just, people would come into the showroom and talk about their needs. And I'm like, they should not be they should be at Mazda, or like there's a Honda dealer next door. That's a much better fit, but I can't tell them that. I got to get them into this Corolla. And that's like, it doesn't sit well with me. So that's what I left to do, was like to have these broader conversations, kind of advisory consulting. And now I had lived on both sides of the like carrier and the insurtech, the buyer and the seller, and gone around to so many different carriers. I probably like 40 or 50 carrier visits and deep conversations. My understanding, it was like my time at McKinsey, like had just grown exponentially. So I left it December 31st, 2019 with this whole vision of like, I'm going to do like advisory work for insurtechs and for carriers and help drive change. And I'd started working on the first Future of Insurance book. And of course, COVID hit. So all of the engagements and like, come speak to our board and like, come speak at this event, everything was gone. I know, everyone went through a lot of hardship then. But yeah, I always say like 2020 for me, I made less than I did my first year out of undergrad, and that's without adjusting for inflation. And I didn't have a wife and a son and a house and cars to pay for back then.
Yeah.
But thank God for my time in sales at High Marley, because it really taught me how to have compelling conversations and how to listen differently and not be afraid to engage with people on that. And I think thank God for having everything fall apart like that and like have to support my family, because I had the skills and now I had the hunger where I had to make this work. And
Mm-hmm.
thankfully I did. Like 2020 was rough, but 2021 and 2022 were outstanding. And I built that myself. Like I could not handle everything coming to me. I had much more inbound activity being thrown at me than I could ever possibly handle. Wish I had AI then. So yeah, it's like I grew tremendously in that time, and more than anything, I got to have a lot of outward impact on the industry, like putting out all this content, giving a vehicle for people with lessons to share, a chance to share those lessons, yourself included. And it's really, really fun. Like I love doing that. It's for me, it's self-help, but for the industry.
We have been the fortunate recipient of your ability to create great and prolific content out of just average stories. So like you've
Oh,
been great
please.
for us. I appreciate it. It's interesting. So going back to like the the startups and newborn example is fascinating. I'll take that with me. Although I have a 4-month-old at home, and we launched Dearborn Labs 3 weeks before she was born.
Yeah.
So much to my wife's chagrin. So like we're living the startup plus sleep deprivation thing all
Yeah.
in
So
one.
you
We're just
basically
going to
had
cram
twins.
it in. Yeah, like great. We'll figure it
Yeah.
out. But the one of the reasons we were really excited to start Dearborn Labs is breadth, because we're a services firm. And so when we go and talk to people, I don't have to sell them a thing. I
Yeah.
just get to understand their problems and their opportunities, and like think about how to solve what matters. And like that breadth is, I mean, it adds complexity, I think, to the relationship a bit, but there's freedom in it. And like
Yeah.
I miss that part of the job. As a VC, you get a lot of breadth. You see all of these different opportunities. You get to
Yeah.
solve a lot of different problems. When you're selling car insurance, you're selling car insurance. If you're selling a piece of software, you're selling a piece of software. Like this has been, I felt that same pull to be able to like want to sit with people and say,
Yeah.
let's just talk about what matters to you.
Yeah.
And from that, I think we'll probably glean some things that are really worth working on. And if I can help you, great. And if I can't, I still found this conversation very interesting. And like there's beauty in that advisory side of the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you, 2020 was rough, picked up in 21 and 22. At what point in running your firm did AI start sort of creeping into the conversation as like man, I really got to think about how I address this as part of my work?
So it definitely started to come up when I was writing the second book, which is where Clear Cover is. The first book was all legacy carriers. That was 2020. 2021 was startups, startup carriers in particular. The third book was collaboration between legacy and insurtech solution providers. So in those two books that had startups in it, AI it wasn't front and center the way it is now, but it was starting to press in. And so it came up more and more, but it was still too early. Like you look at was OpenAI and ChatGPT, were they even around yet in 2022? They might have been a thing.
The company was formed in like 2016, so it's old. The company has been around a long time, but like quiet and in research. No, GPT-3 I think came out 22, right? Or 24. 3. Yeah, it was right in that time zone. Yeah.
So like we were still embedded, was like yourself included. Like embedded was the conversation. So
and
yeah,
AI was machine learning, and like there were different versions of how we talked about AI back then. It wasn't LLM. LLMs are a version of AI, but it's not. AI's broader than that. We just tend to conflate LLMs and AI now. But before there was, I have this model, I have that model. We do machine learning to do X and Y. Like that was around in the early 2020s, certainly.
Yeah, and in the first book, one of the case studies is CNA Insurance and Shift Technologies, and Shift uses AI in the fraud space, but that's a very different version of AI than what we talk about today.
Right.
So that, not to say they're not both AI, but that's specific AI deployed in a very specific way versus general AI. Someone put it really brilliantly to me, is like the kind of AI that Shift is using, and this is not a knock on it at all, it's the right answer for what they're doing, is like giving someone a recipe to follow exactly. Like you got your your meal prep box, and it had the exact recipes, your Blue Apron box, and like you made exactly what it said with the things that you were given to make it. The current like Claude and ChatGPT and like these agentic tools and the LLM based ones that have much more knowledge and flexibility to be deployed in more general ways. And I don't know that they count as like general AI or whatever that ultimate vision is around autonomy. But it's like their understanding of food and ingredients and the way they interact and how heat changes them. And you can ask it to like look in the fridge and make a meal like a chef would. So one is like a cook who's following instructions. Anyone can do that versus you let a chef loose in your kitchen and they will create a meal for you. And that wasn't there yet.
Right.
That is definitely a much more today or past couple of years kind of conversation.
Yeah, it's funny. I won't get into it too deeply here, but we have we posted about it recently. One of the things that we do is we work with people to understand the verbs in their business, because if you can break your business down into a set of verbs, it becomes much easier to figure out what technology is tied to a verb. So if the verb is read and summarize, like that works pretty well for LLMs. Yeah. If the verb is decide, now you have to think about whether or not, the cheapest way to decide is to just have a rule written down in code that the data gets, sent to, and it gives you the answer back. But then
we're not talking about the same kind of tool anymore.
But, and if you went all the way back in time, you would business rules technically were considered the AI of their time,
right?
Like that. And so, So in theory, like we say, look, deconstruct the work into a set of verbs, and then you can start to tie technology to the verbs with much more clarity on like what's efficient versus what's effective, and where do I find that sort of the right balance there.
Yeah.
And to your point, like LLM's very flexible. What they do is they predict the next word. Like that is what an LLM does. It's like it's a word predictor. And so you can point it at a fridge and say, make me a meal. And that is a perfectly fine use case, unless there are limited ingredients and they're already on the counter, and that's all you have to work with, in which case it's probably not worth pointing an LLM at it, right? You'd be better off saying like, man, I wish I just had a recipe, because all I need to know how to do is work with these damn ingredients that are sitting on the counter in front of me.
Yeah.
And so like an LLM could give you the answer, but in our world, that's a more expensive way to do it than just having a rule next to you that says, here's how you put them together. And so like you have to, we spend a lot of time with folks thinking about what is the most efficient tool for the job. And really that exists because LLMs are so flexible that they can get used in many ways. It just turns out that a lot of those use cases are, depending on the model you choose to use, not the most efficient or safe way to get the work done. Because that same LLM you point at the fridge might also create something shitty once in a while.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have the ingredients on the counter and a recipe next to it, the odds I'm going to create something shitty go down quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so like sure. That's like this they're incredibly flexible tools, but it is this constant balancing act of like, what is the right tool for the job, both in terms of efficacy and cost. But LLMs obviously like bell of the ball now. Everybody started to talk about, like you said it yourself, ChatGPT 3 came out, and I think that was sort of maybe the beginning for in most of business and consumer consciousness of what these tools were capable of doing.
That changed the conversation.
And how so now in your job as an advisor, like how has that changed the job?
I think it's created a new set of possibilities around some of the problems that we faced. I think your point about like you just want a recipe sometimes, that is still true, and maybe that's lost some of its luster, but it's the right answer. And so there are a lot of technically like resting on an LLM but recipe kind of solutions out there that you can call them a point solution. Some of the stuff that like we'll write communications to customers, and like technically that's not necessarily as fixed as some of those earlier generation tools, but its purpose is really finite and controlled, and so it is a bit of a recipe with more bounds to it. I think those are really interesting solutions, and there's more of them coming online. One of the things a lot of carriers battle with is like, we can't have 73 different solutions that we're dealing with. And I talked to a carrier in Canada. This is like 2021. And they had put in a brand new core system that gave them all this flexibility, spent a ton on it. And they had a really digital experience for FNOL, and then everything else wasn't. And so they decided to shut off the digital FNOL path because they didn't want to have people fall off this digital cliff from a customer experience. I was like, well, did you check with your customers whether they like that? But there are other things you can do. It's like, well, after FNOL, you can do this. And you can do. He's like, yeah, but that's too many vendors for us to manage. So they were customers of one of the very large core system providers out there. He's like, we're just waiting for them to build everything and put it in. I'm like, but that's not their model anymore. Their model is a marketplace where you're turning on these solutions and plugging them in. I was like, how many body shops do you work with? And he's like, oh, about 1,200. I was like, okay, so somehow you're managing 1,200 of them, but I'm talking about like 6, and you're like, oh, that's too much. Actually, like we can vendor manage, or like, God, I wish we didn't do that, but we can vendor manage large swaths of the market and many different providers. The thing that like the agentic solutions present to us is something we don't have to manage those relationships, but we don't have to manage the tools. So like I have these 4 agents that are helping me with my podcast production.
Yeah, tell me about your
I really
your
only
agent
work
team.
with. So I've got Charlie, who's my chief of staff, all their names, because I'm getting old. Like I needed names that signal to me what their responsibilities are. So Charlie's chief of staff, Rebecca is research, Sierra is my writer, which is tied to the word SEO, even though I hate SEO, but she's writing things in a way, she is writing things in a way that like, hopefully we'll get engagement. And then I've got Oscar, who's my operations and systems guy. So ONS, Oscar.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've been able to keep them straight because of how I named them, but I don't have to. I just talk to, I don't have to say who I'm talking to generally. And Charlie is that conductor who figures out who needs to do what. And sometimes it's multiples of them. So they each, this probably sounds like, wow, Bryan, you're really stupid. There's no them. It's all just like this one tool, and you're just but
it's
whatever.
Not stupid at all. We anthropomorphize all of the tools we built over at ClearCover, and we still do it today. And my personal agent's name is Jarvis. Like something in us likes to name things we create. Yeah. So like this is not stupid at all.
Well, so like I don't have to worry about who's supposed to do what. I don't have to worry about like which tool is writing the letters and which one is doing this and which one has to go pull the police reports and which one's getting the building codes from PLRB, hint, hint. I can just have my AI agent conduct this appropriately. And so like, yes, you have to contract with those vendors and renew and pay and all the and I'm so sorry, that's a lot, but day to day, you actually don't have to make any of those decisions. And increasingly you don't have to integrate or even connect via API, any of this stuff. Even if it is an API connection, your agent can handle that for you as well.
Right.
So I think the excuse of it's too much for us to manage all these things goes away. And I know point solutions are not necessarily the sexiest path, but sometimes they're the correct path, at least for some types of things you need to solve for. I think it's a lot easier for us to do that. And it may end up feeling like that one core system provider ended up building everything for you. They didn't. You just had an agent that solved for it.
What about how has the build versus buy question evolved in the work you do with carriers?
Yeah.
With like, given AI and its ability to, we have again seen where obviously the build firms were biased, but like the, it's changed a bit. I think there's a lot of people sitting back and starting to think about like what is worth building, what's worth buying. If I buy it, I have to manage it. If I build it, I still have to manage it, but I could probably make it work together a little bit better. So like as you think about your role sort of as an advisor to the industry, like have you seen any change or do you have any thoughts on how people are approaching this build versus buy question today?
I don't know that I've seen a ton of change recently. I did before. I mean, it used to always pretty much be build, and I did see a movement towards more buy, especially as the cloud-based core systems came into the mix, because you can't build. I mean, you can, but you really shouldn't. That defeats the whole purpose of it. You basically just have like disaster recovery. That's the only upside now. But there's two things. One is I I had Joe Emerson, the co-founder of Branch, on my show along with Steve Lekis at the same time. And Joe said something about their decision. Like, he's a tech guy and he's building lots of stuff, and they bought a lot, or they've had other firms build for them. And he said, for us, it's like, if it's part of our material advantage or differentiation, we should build it. If not, we have no business building it, because like, why should we be better at that than someone who that is their product and they will maintain it and keep moving it forward? And that, drawing that line, I know he's not the one who created that line, but like, that was really helpful for me to hear that. And that's something that I've echoed back to others. And I think that's important. We do the same thing at PLRB, is like, do we have to build that? If it's core to who we are and why we exist, then we should be the ones building it. If not, we should see what's available off the shelf. The thing that I would love to see more of is build versus buy has always been about like code. Ultimately, is like, it's a piece of code, or it's a product that is a product built of code, some capability driven by code. I would rather see the build versus buy decision be about capabilities. So, or like expertise. So you're not building the thing, but if your expertise is understanding how to use AI to get that solution in place, then have that build, but let it figure out whether it's buying or building or writing its own code, or like, I think we need to move it more to kind of first principles, whether we build or we buy. So like, are we working with a partner who is thinking through this for us and guiding us on it, and they have the kind of the center of excellence around how we deploy these things? Or do we have that center of excellence in-house? Don't worry so much about whether, like, you subscribe to this SaaS solution, or your IT team built it, or Claude Code built it for you. Like, that's like a logistical question or a tactical question that the answer should fall out pretty clearly, but have the expertise to make the decision. That's what you should be building or buying, I think.
Yes.
What do
it's no, it is absolutely the right question, and at least in my mind. And what's fascinating is, Joe's point, which I think is right, is you want to build and own the things that are important to your differentiation, that you would think of as like a competitive advantage. And for years and years, it was the software. It was like the thing, or the capability the software allowed you to have, or the financial result you got from owning that software. But it was like it was the thing you built. I think more and more what we're seeing, you have to really unpack the definition of like, what is the competitive advantage? Where does it come from? And with LLMs, more and more the answer to that is context and data.
Mm-hmm.
And the things your business knows and does that other businesses don't know and do. And this is where this, like, how do I secure my competitive position question gets very interesting, because it's shifted now. And you see this in the news, like Alex Karp and Chamath are all over talking about, like, how do you protect your alpha? You protect your alpha by protecting your weights, by protecting your knowledge and your data and your context. And like, I don't know that they're wrong. I mean, it's a bit hyperbolic right now, but the point is, if you believed that the thing that made your business unique was how you ran it and the knowledge you've accumulated over the years of running it and how that informs how you run it, that changes how you think about protecting that information. Because if you push all that into a vendor solution and suddenly if your knowledge is helping to design a piece of software that other people get to use, it's not, you're not guaranteed to lose your advantage, but it may start to be diluted. Whereas if you have a piece of software that like kind of walls off this knowledge you have gained over years and years of running the business, something as simple as like, this is how our underwriters process a submission. Like if a vendor helps you sort of design that into a workflow that is in a platform that other people get to use, you just lost that secret sauce in your business.
Yeah.
And so like, I think there's this very critical question we're all approaching right now, which I think you were getting to as well, is protecting your advantage is important. What it means to do that in a world of LLMs is probably different than it was in a pre-LLM world.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, and I think people should be honest with themselves about whether they need help in figuring that out, because it's tricky. And I think people maybe they may be disadvantaged in figuring out where those points lie within their own business.
Mm-hmm.
They may overestimate the importance of some things and completely miss others because it's just second nature for them. They don't even think about it. So yeah, having someone help them navigate that, I think, is not such a bad thing to
Or
buy and not
just
build.
asking the question, like that,
Yeah.
that is where, and I think it's through relationships with folks like you and the content you put out. Like, these are great places to just start asking the questions,
Yeah.
so that people become aware of the things that they have to start to understand. That's the most important thing, I think, is
Yeah.
you have you helped with that quite a bit. All right, so Bryan, I do not want to take up your whole day, and I do want to get to quickfire because you gave me some really great stuff to work with here.
Okay.
So that we ask for a quote or something meaningful to you.
Well, you got to
You
change
sent
my
me.
hat before you do this, then.
Yeah, please.
All right.
Let's move
I
on.
said I'd wear at least 2 hats, so now I got to put on my
Perfect.
self-help hat for Do a Day. It's my first.
So tell us about Do a Day before we get into the quickfire question.
Do a Day is a philosophy I use to live my life, and it's inspired by a vegan ultra endurance athlete who my wife thinks I have like an unhealthy crush on, but and he'd tell me to jump off a bridge and I would, but a guy named Rich Roll is what sparked it. But it's based on actually a premise from Buddhism, from Buddha himself. It only matters what is in front of us right now, right? So when I had 100 pounds to lose, I could never do it. Every single day, and I can't even tell you how many mornings I'd like have that talk with myself about like, this is the day, and you're not. And by 10 o'clock, like, it was all out the window. I'd eaten like 6 bagels and donuts and whatever. And so I'd throw the whole thing away, and then I'd eat even more because it's all ruined. And so I never lost the 100 pounds. And then I realized I'm never losing 100 pounds, because you don't lose 100 pounds today. You don't climb to the top of a mountain in one step. I just had to do what I need to do today to make better choices to set me a little bit closer to that goal, because I'm not losing 100 pounds today. No matter how hard I work, when I step on that scale tomorrow morning, if I'm lucky, it'll be 99 pounds that I have to lose. Like, you like bust yourself, like you go crazy in the gym and all this, like maybe you'd be a pound lighter if, and it's probably just water weight. So with anything we have to achieve, the goal should be big, but it's so far out there that if you just think about that, it will always be impossible. So you need to instead look at, what can I do today to move myself forward? And it doesn't matter if I failed yesterday, and there's no penance for that. And it doesn't throw everything away. And it doesn't matter if I can do that tomorrow, or tomorrow's too hard. Running a marathon, when I started training, the most I had run in a long time was like 4 miles. How the heck am I going to do 26.2? It's impossible. And 4 is so hard. It's like, right. But that's a few months out, and I will train and I will get better. And I don't need to worry about, oh my God, how am I ever going to do that? Because I'm not doing that right now. And it was that sense of like, everything is going to fall apart and it's all too big, was my anxiety issue that I referenced like from childhood, that it was always too much. And the thing is, the too much is not ever happening right now. So we don't have to focus on all of that. We just need to focus on what we need to do in this moment to move ourselves forward, which is not grin and bear it, just like grit your teeth and get through. That's like just dealing with the pain. That's not the same thing as moving forward through it. So that's something I've used myself. I've done in coaching with other people. And then I wrote a book about it called Do a Day. That was back in 2018. I did a TEDx on it, and I continue to deal with it every day. And some days go really well, and other days I reflect and grow from, because they weren't what I wished them to be. And the good news is, the next day, it's a fresh day, and I can do differently regardless of how yesterday went. And I don't get to just like slack off and not care about what matters to me because I did well yesterday. It's all conscious decisions about things.
I love that. For the audience, we post these in a couple of places, but we will make sure to post Bryan's books and TED Talk, and there's a whole bunch of things that we've referred to in this episode. We'll make sure we get links up for you as well, because these are all worth digging into yourself. I mean, you start by listening to this podcast, but I've looked at some of it myself, and the content is well worth reading on its own.
Thank you.
All right, and then so tell us about must have, must not have.
Oh yeah. So I mentioned that guy was like a mentor who became my boss, who's the CEO at Hiscox, a guy named Ben Walter. So Ben and I met for lunch. Headhunter put us together. It was our first time meeting. And I was thinking of leaving Beazley, and I was pretty lost in what to do. And we were both ex-consultants. And so I was like, I saw this job and this job. They were all like not insurance jobs. I was like, that's really interesting. And I could tell a story of why I could do that. And one was like chief of staff at Akamai. And I like tech. And I'm like, I could do that. And here's all and he's like, you need to stop being a management consultant that can just like jump into any context and convince themselves they can do it, because you'll never get hired. He's like, everyone you're going up against has 15 years or 20 years or whatever in that space, probably working for a competitor, and their HR's not even going to look at you. And you don't really know why you're interested in that job. He's like, this is a exercise a mentor gave me years ago. And so he gave it to me. And it's, you take a piece of paper, split it down the middle. One half, you write the things you must have. And the other half is the things you must not have in your next job. And they can't just be opposites of each other. Like must make at least 100 grand, must not make less than 100 grand. I always use that example, but like his point is it helps you to understand what truly matters to you. And it makes you a much better candidate because you understand yourself. This doesn't just apply to jobs, but that's the context he gave it to me in. And I use it a lot with career coaching that I do with people. But he had me take a stab at it. I sent him my answers and he ripped it apart, rightly so. It's onions, right? Like he's like, this is just the outside layer. Yeah. He's like, you need to really start peeling it back. So when I use the $100,000 example, it's just like arbitrary, easy number. Because I get that from people. It's like, I have to make at least this much. It's like, okay, if you got every other must have and none of the must nots, and instead of 100, they came back like, we're going to offer you $90,000 a year. Do you take it? And everyone I've ever said this to is like, oh, definitely. I'm like, okay, so then it's not that you must have $100,000. Why did you say that? And then you get the stories like, well, I want to travel and I've looked at my expenses and what I need to pay for, to be able to do those trips. And I think it's about 100 grand a year for me to be able to do that. Or I want to retire at this age. And so I need to be able to save, like whatever the story is. I was like, okay, well, what if you got like 5 days off and it's like the place is a sweatshop and you never get to even take your 5 days off, right, and they pay you $200,000 a year. And it's like, oh, well, I can't do that then because I can't travel. It's like, right. So it's not must have 100,000. It's about something in your life you're wishing to be able to enable that requires other things. That's what you have to get at, not just some like one random arbitrary piece of that puzzle. So, it's not like must not work weekends. Okay, well, why not? Must not manage people. Why not? Because you might find that managing the right kinds of people actually is really, really rewarding. You've just not seen that yet. So it could be that you don't want to manage, but you got to pick that apart and not just leave it at this surface level thing. So that's the must have, must not have. And once I did the exercise, I'd applied for 70 jobs, something like that on LinkedIn. I did the exercise, did another round of applying for stuff. I had 2 offers in a week. One of them was the job I took in Boston for 11 months. The other was the job I should have taken with the guy who ended up being this mentor to me. And but they were both like, obviously I took the job, so something about it did fit. And I was aware of what didn't. I just was lying to myself. But the other one, like, my God, that would have been the perfect job. At least at the time. So yeah, it was transformational for me.
We'll put the link up here too. It's at bryanfalchuk.com/must. This is written up for ink. So we'll put it in the show notes as well. But we'll have another conversation someday around, we like those lists too. We do pre-mortems around here, which is like a version of it. And like, just sort of starting to think about not heuristics, but like really what are the underlying attributes of a thing that are going to cause it to be successful or not a success. But I think the thing with your 11-month stint, what's fascinating about these exercises, this must and must not, is that they're often temporal as well, and they rely on like your own conviction around the thing, which can change. And so like what you'll find is like you might do that exercise perfectly, and then 11 months later find out that you just didn't quite understand a thing about yourself as much as you thought you did when you did the exercise, or something about you changed in the interim. And so like, it's still worth doing, but it is a really complicated exercise to do.
It's a never-ending onion.
There you go.
And we never do it perfectly because there's always something we just haven't been able to get in touch with yet.
All right, one more question for you, Bryan, before my
All
producer Jen kills me because she's got to review all this stuff. We've gone through a bunch of your career and your work, and among many things that you're an expert in and been successful at, transformation is something that, like, you transformed yourself, your body, you've helped people through, you've helped clients through this. So, like, when you think about the world today and all that you see going on, and a client comes to you and they're like, they want to transform their business, what piece of advice do you have for that client? How do they start that process?
Yeah. I did just want to say my favorite toy growing up was Transformers, and I didn't even put two and two together until you started saying that. So
there you go.
It's been written since childhood between my dad and my toys.
It often is.
So I think there's kind of two things. Is one is like, what am I watching out for? And that's hubris. So I think the thing that stops anyone from true success and greatness is the level of hubris at play. And we have that in spades in the insurance industry. Cash is often kind of a fill-in for hubris, or it's like the embodiment of it is like, well, we have so much money in the bank, and somehow we take that as a sign of success of us, and it pads us from the pain of true failure. And that's why you see some of the really large carriers who can afford to lose 5, 10, 20 billion dollars on a line of business. And actually, like, maybe not 20, but I've seen one lose 10 more than 1 year in a row, and they're still fine, and they still have tons of money, and they're still just as big as they always were. Actually, they're bigger. So it reinforces that, like, oh, actually, and this was what I didn't like about insurance initially, was you can be really mediocre and still be successful. You can be bad at your core business, but the investment people or what you have socked away will smooth it all out. So don't worry about that. And that's what I loved about specialty, is the opposite. We have to be expert in our core, and anything else is gravy. So I look for that first. But then the thing that I always push people on is, I mean, it's tied to it, but it's culture. So how open are you to this? And it's like, what I would give them is the design thinking kind of approach to it. We live in an industry that is very much we can't because, like, we are risk averse. We have regulation, we've got IT constraints, budget, our people don't want to change. Whatever our reasons are, they may be true and valid, but we frame so much possibility around we can't because, and then, you can't, not with that attitude. So I try to get them to engage, or give them the tools to engage around, like, okay, I will take that as fact, but let's just set it aside for a minute. Let's just play. What if we didn't have to, or deal with that constraint? How might we do this? So instead of we can't because, it's how might we? And I feel so bad for the people who hear me talk about this too much, because I'm like a broken record, but it really matters. How might we, go to market with this new product offering? And what you find is, when people can dream without the pre-existing constraint that stops them up front, they actually find a way to do it. The constraint may not be relevant anymore, or at the very least, you now have a business case. Because before, the cost benefit analysis was, cost is, astronomical because of all the how might, or we can't becauses, right? Like IT and regulation and whatever, it's going to be tens of millions of dollars, or could never happen. And so therefore the benefit is zero, because you've not allowed for any possibility in sizing up the upside. So it's zero versus massively negative. Like, you're not going to make that call. But if you go with how might we, at least there's a benefit case that you can then compare to an updated cost side, and then make a decision rationally of, like, okay, now that we understand what it would take, what could we get out of this? And maybe it's worth us moving ahead. So I don't think it matters what you want to do. If you're not going in with the right kind of cultural mindset around it, you're not going to be successful. Like, you have to shift your mindset on it.
Yeah, I love that. The unconstrained thinking is so critical to making real progress. But to your point, it requires a certain level of cultural investment. You can't just ask people to do that. You have to have people who are willing to, and they have to be rewarded for doing it too. So,
and no one's perfect or immune to that, myself included. I have plenty of we can't because reactions to things, or someone's asking for change, like, oh, that's impossible. And sometimes I catch myself, sometimes people catch me. We all need to be conscious of this on the regular.
Well, we'll leave it at that. You've given us a ton of great advice in this conversation, Bryan. I've learned a lot through our conversations over the years. So we'll sort of link all the content and the books, I think, for the audience, well worth looking into yourself. Bryan has done a lot, learned a lot, and is one of those few people who's made the investment in sharing those learnings with us through his work and his content and his writing. So Bryan, thanks for all you do. Thanks for being on the podcast. It's been great hanging out. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Kyle.